the first part of this talk is intended to scare you, really scare you, okay? And what I want you to think about is what you do in your job, or what you may well be doing in your future career or your future job. And ask yourself this question: could a machine do what you do? That's the question. Now, I want to, let's think about like some things that you could potentially do that you would think, these are things that no machine could possibly do. So let's say, what do we think? Do you think, if you're a doctor, do you think a machine could do what a doctor does? Hands up. Anyone who thinks that's possible? Okay. Anyone who thinks, an artist. Anyone think that a machine could do what an artist does? Okay. Anyone, there's a lot less people. Anyone who thinks that a machine could do what the Prime Minister does? Okay, so there are huge numbers of reasons to be afraid about this, right? This is the possibility that in the future there will no longer be any jobs for humans, right? This is not a future that is completely mad, yes. A lot of people believe that this is almost a sure thing. To the point that you see headlines which say things like, AI making huge strides, performs dermatologist-level skin cancer classification. Or AlphaGo, for example, beats the world player. More robots, fewer jobs, yes. These sort of headlines. Now, I don't know if there's going to be a robot teacher, or a robot professor like me in the future. And I wanted to set out to see whether that was really going to be true. And my process of setting out on this quest to ask this question about whether or not this is really true is what I'm going to be talking to you about today. To understand where we got to this point, that machines could potentially take over what humans do, we have to go back and have a look at a little bit of history. Next slide, please. So, this has really been developing for over 200 years. But I'd start with the Victorian era. And these people, Charles Babbage and Ada Lovelace. And Charles Babbage was the first person to invent what we might call computer hardware, really. And Ada Lovelace was the first recognizable computer programmer. Now, the thing is that it's taken a long time, nearly a century had to go past before Alonzo Church and Alan Turing came up with the idea of a general theoretical basis for computing, because there was hardware and software, but no theory for how this might all fit together. And in principle, at least, they came up with this idea of a machine called the Turing machine that could potentially do all calculations that any human could do. That's the idea. It's a thesis, it's not a proof. That there are machines out there that you can demonstrably show can do all calculations that humans could do. Now, the thing is, that's in theory. The practice of it only really started taking off when Will Shockley and others at AT&T Labs invented the transistor. And they invented the microchip as well, which came along. With that invention, they kicked off the era of so-called exponentially increasing miniaturization of computing machines. And this is famously summed up in a law named after Gordon Moore, who was the co-founder of Intel Corporation, Intel that make all the chips that go into your PCs, for example, known as Moore's Law, after him, obviously, that's right. At the same time, in the 1950s, pioneers such as Frank Rosenblatt here, who's actually a psychologist, started experimenting seriously with the idea of mimicking how the brain is wired up, yes. So this is really the beginning of the notion of artificial intelligence. He came up with this idea of the artificial neural network. And later, it became clear that to make substantial progress, artificial intelligence was going to have to cope with uncertainty, because computers are not very good with uncertainty, but the real world is always uncertain, right? But this idea has been essentially solved in theory by this chap, Judea Pearl, in the 1980s. And this brings us up to the modern era of artificial intelligence with these two people, Jan LeCun and Geoffrey Hinton. And they came up with this idea called deep learning, which is basically artificial neural networks, which are very, very deep layers. And this has brought us things like Siri's speech recognition, yes? And things like Google's automated photo labeling apps. Right? These are all powered by the ideas that have been invented by these two, pretty much. Now that we understand how we got here, we need to know what the current state of the art is, yes? That's the past. Now let's look at the current. Where are we now with this hardware? And this leads us to ask the first question, which is, what is intelligence? Right, so what do you mean by that? Now, this is a very vexed question. This is a very difficult question to answer. But I just want to put it to you, a few possibilities about what intelligence could possibly be. One possibility is that intelligence is just about memory, yes? It's just about memorizing lots and lots of things really, really well, right? So if that's the case, we'd have to pit nature's memory against computer memory. Now, what is nature's memory? Well, nature's memory is essentially DNA. Now, that represents all the information in your genome, which is the record in history of all the things that all animals before you that led to you encountered in their environment and led to you as the winner. You are the success story of that massive evolutionary history, which is recorded in your DNA. And of course, there have been trillions and trillions of individuals, and there are countless DNA strings out there, yes? But these things have survived for billions and billions of years. Yes, for billions of years. Now that means really that the amount of information that's stored in DNA versus the amount of information that's stored in computer memory, that's the winner. So DNA is very much definitely winning currently. So intelligence really isn't just about memory, is it, right? Intelligence could be more than that. You can be memory plus you have to have a lot of experience, yes? You've got to see a lot of things. If so, what that's going to do is pit, for example, I'll just give an example of what I mean by experience, like sensory experience, the things that you see with your eyes, yes? So that would pit, say, your eye, that's your retina, against a digital camera, right? These are broadly similar things, yes? And we'd have to ask how much information is this thing capturing versus how much information is a digital camera capturing, yes? And by one estimate, a retina has about 74 million dots on it, light-sensitive dots, right? Now, digital camera sensors approach that. There are camera sensors you can get that are even more detailed than that. But the thing about the human retina is that you've had one ever since you were a fetus. And this has been collating images once every 25 times a second from the moment you were born, yes? And possibly earlier. So the thing is that this has been amassing a vast amount of information, and it's been somehow filtered into your perception in your brain somewhere. So I estimate, it's just a simple calculation would be that there's about 5 times 10 to the 8 number of bits of information. Sorry, 5 times 10 to the 18 bits of information that you'll experience over your lifetime. Now, to give you some idea, 10 to the 12 is a trillion, right? So it's a lot bigger than that. And the thing is that is about the scale of the size of all the information on YouTube. So that's what you've been experiencing that's what you will experience over your entire life, right? But there are billions of us, of course. So that gives you some idea that the human retina is probably experiencing more information than all these cameras are currently. So it can't just be about the amount of information we're amassing, yes? It could also be about computational speed, yeah? So how fast can you think? Someone who can think faster than somebody else is presumably more intelligent, yes? That's how that's what we'd suggest. Now here, the story is quite different, yes? This is a neuron, okay? It switches about 10 to 100 pulses per second if you're lucky. It takes about a second for you to stub your toe and then for you to feel the pain, right? So that gives you an idea about how fast the information is transferred in neurons, yes? This thing here, that's a transistor, and there are now tens to hundreds of billions of these on a smartphone's processor. But this thing here can make about 1 to 5 billion decisions per second, yes? So clearly, transistors win hands down. Computers can currently think far, far faster than we possibly can. So if we just sum this up and we ask what's intelligence at the moment, yes, the current state of humans versus machines, well, they're not equal, right? It's not clear who's the winner here, you know. Machines are certainly faster, but nature stores much more. But nature is also more efficient, it can process more information with less energy, for example. So it's not a slam dunk either way. Next slide. So let's now look to the future. So we've looked at the past, the history, look at the current state of the art, and let's see where this is going. We can try to extrapolate into the future a bit. So this is how a future of AI could work. And I'm going to give you like a really simple idea that could mean that all of this, the idea of putting all of you out of work, all of us out of work in the future, is totally possible. Yeah, totally possible on some really simple principle. And it's the idea which I like to call the giant lookup table hypothesis. I'll explain what I mean by that. This is the big data dream for AI, right? This is about collecting vast amounts of information. And let me give you a simple idea about where this could work and how this might work. Basically, maybe many of you will probably know about things like ANPR, so automatic number plate recognition. If you go to a garage and you fill up your car, there's not somebody sitting there looking at a CCTV and writing down your number plate, yes? It's actually machine learning that recognizes what your number plate is and then records that information automatically. So that's already happening right now, yes? Now the question is, how could that work? Not how does it work, but how could that work? The answer is pretty simple, right? All we do is we get a list of all the possible digital images that could exist. So we'd have a table that has all the possible list of values of pixels, for example, for A, B, C, D, etc., for all of the numbers, yes? And then we just have this big lookup table that tells us what the label is associated with that, yes? So what letter, what number is it, based on that image? And the thing is that then all the camera has to do is it just has to ask the computer, I've seen a new image, so what's the label for it? Yes? I've seen these pixels here. I've seen these pixels. What's the label for it? You just have a program that just looks it up and gives you the answer. That's perfect, right? And it will always work. It's completely infallible, and it's completely possible to solve every possible AI problem that way. Yes? Now, this is actually quite close to how a lot of AI systems work these days. But the question is there a catch to this? Would this possibility, you can see how simple it is, right? Would it work? Would it work at all in practice? I'm going to say, fortunately, the answer is no. It's complete bunkum, yes? It's nonsense. Why is it nonsense? Because even if I take a really small image like this, here, this is only 20 by 20 pixels, yeah? And I would say it's got 8 bits per pixel, so that tells me how the values of the grayscales in here. There's 2 to the 3,200 possible images of that, yes? Now that number is more than the number of particles in the universe. So that means it is totally impossible to do that dream, yes? This big data dream for AI is never going to happen because you'd need as much hardware as there is, well, you'd need the whole of the universe to be that computing hardware to make that possible, yes? Convert all the stars, all the planets, everything into into hardware to make that happen, and it's still not feasible, right? So, but a child can easily read digits like this and recognize them. So how does a child do it if AI can't, in principle, do this? Well, in essence, the reason why this isn't the case, or why this is not just looking up information, yeah, it's because of the fact that knowledge requires more than just remembering lots of data, yes? Okay, and next example. Here's another thing that AI could do. So, we just have a really simple idea here, which is that we want to solve some task in your job. That involves processing information and coming up with some particular answer, yeah? Now, as a solution to every problem, presumably, you just have to try them all out, yes? Let's try out all possible solutions, given a problem, yeah? Now, given how fast computers really are, you could quite easily see that this could be done, right? So a computer can be completely dumb. All it has to do is search through all the possible answers, yes? Now, I call that the giant hypothesis search engine, yes? It's like a search engine that tries out all possible explanations for your problem. And then it picks the best one, yeah? So let me give an example of this. I don't know if you know about the logistics network, the global logistics networks, the global so-called containerized transport network. Now, if you don't know about this is absolutely amazing, yes? Because containerized logistics network move pretty much everything you buy around the world, yes? On shipping containers and trucks and rail, etc., yeah? It's absolutely mind-bogglingly vast. And the thing is that the number of problems that you have to solve are pretty large in this system. For example, one of the hardest problems, and it may seem like an easy problem, but it's not, is the so-called traveling salesman problem, right? This is how the computer scientists call it. That is, what you have to find is the shortest circular route that visits a number of cities, yes? That's it, simple idea, just visits these cities. And how might we solve this problem using this big computer idea, this big search engine? Well, it's simple. We just try all the possible routes, yeah, and pick the best one. Yeah, that's how to solve that problem. Is that going to work? Fortunately for us, the answer is no, that doesn't work either. Right, why can't that work? Well, because of the fact of a really nice idea, a really nice phrase that computer scientists use called combinatorial explosion. I like that, combinatorial explosion. So what does that mean? If you have 15 cities and you want to find the shortest route through them, yes, it turns out there's over 1 trillion possible routes, yes? So that's a lot with just 15 cities. And imagine a containerized network, you have to solve problems with hundreds of cities or thousands of them, right? The reason why is because it's factorial. That exclamation mark just means 1 times 2 times 3 times 4 all the way up to 15, yes. And that gets bigger and bigger and bigger. It gets astronomically large, as this number is even like up to 20 is ludicrously large. Okay, but the kicker is that human planners can actually come up with pretty good routes that are close to optimal just by plotting this out. And you say, oh yes, that's a pretty good route, that'll do. And most of the time when you do that, it works really well. It's not optimal, but it works really well. So how do we do that? Well, in essence, you can say that understanding a problem is not just searching for through all the dumb possible solutions. You understand something about this problem, right? And that's how you're able to come up with a good route. This is about predicting the future. To see where we are with machine versus human intelligence and to try and make predictions, it's helpful to look at one particular area of human ingenuity, yes, to see where this is going. This figure here is called Moore's Law that I mentioned earlier on, and it charts the decrease in time needed to solve a fixed mathematical problem due to improvements in computers alone, improvements just in computer hardware, right? And that's since time has gone by, since the 1960s. And this is a particular area. It's the area that I do a lot of work in. It's called this is just mathematical algorithms, numerical problems. And you can see here that Moore's Law follows this straight line downwards, right? At the top, that's just computers getting better, right? This is a logarithmic scale, and this is called an exponentially decreasing line because of that, right? What you want is that line goes down, because that means things get faster, basically, yes. Now, that's just computer hardware alone. Let's have a look at this blue line instead. What that is improvements in speed in solving this problem due to human ingenuity, yes? Due to people who are trained to understand these problems, have worked out ways to find better algorithms for solving these problems. And you can see that this vastly outstrips Moore's law, yes? What this means is that human ingenuity has long outstripped what computers have been able to do, yes? The improvement is vast, you can see. So I'll end on this point. Back to my quest then. I started off pretty scared. And I started off, I think, in a way, by trying to make it clear to you that in some ways, if you believe those headlines, you should be scared. You really should be scared, because this could be worse than climate change. This could be the end of the economy for us, right? No productive role for us whatsoever. But I think that having gone through this detail, if you look behind the headlines and you look at what's actually possible, I start to feel a lot better, start to feel a lot less scared for my future, a lot less scared for my children's future, yes. I don't think it's going to happen in any time soon that computers are going to take over our economy. I don't think that's actually going to happen. However, there is one area where things could get worse for us, and that's because of us. If some programmer over there, or over there, decides to formulate the rules of this person's job, yeah, then that programmer could write a program that puts that person out of work, yes? But that's people using computers to vie off against each other to come up with better ways of putting each other out of work, essentially. So I think that it's not really machines that are going to be at fault for making this happen. It's us. It's us for using these machines in essentially an unethical way, yes? So I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future. After all, making predictions is hard, particularly about the future. But I think we're going to be okay if we just think ahead. Thank you very much.